for the stop again. Thank you to everyone who's come today to celebrate and to discuss the importance of International Women's Day and the struggles that we're facing. It's difficult to think back to a time when the threat to women's rights has been stronger. This is a very, very difficult time for women in all the different spheres of life. And International Women's Day was set up as a working class women's day to celebrate what working class women can achieve and have achieved, and to really make the point that we want bread and roses too. We want to have a decent standard of living, and we want to have the chance to take part in life's glories, as the song says. So we've a really good set of speakers. I'm just pleased to see that Swasthika has joined us. So we've got speakers. Is Mizgin here from the Mizgin? Is she here?
Hello.
Yes.
Hi,
Oh,
I'm
great.
here.
Hiya. Just checking your ear, Grace. Hiya. Thank you. So we've got speakers from India, from Pakistan, from Sri Lanka, from representing, Miskin's here representing the Kurdish struggle, and Swastika from Sri Lanka. So we've and Marcia, of course. Marcia is so much a part of my daily life at the moment that I forget that she's also very far away in Namibia. So great to have so many people here from across the world and from across the different struggles that we're all facing. And of course, Kate and I are from the UK, and Kate's real specialism is speaking about the impact of war on as previous General Secretary and now Vice President of CND. She is, of course, an expert on these things. Roger, while I'm talking, can you admit people? Is that
Yes, I'm doing that. Don't worry.
Good. Okay, thank you. So I know that Haneen has said that she wants to speak early because of the fast. And I know that Maya and Zira, it's very late at night for you. It's a lovely afternoon for us in the UK. It's a very late at night for people from India and from Pakistan. So I think if it's okay, is it throwing too much on you, Haneen, to ask you to speak first?
No, not at all.
Well, can you talk to us, please, about women from Palestine?
Yes, so as yesterday was International Women's Day, watching all the Palestinian women and just honouring them for, their resilience and the fire that they hold in their souls has been absolutely amazing. When you think about a Palestinian woman, well, I don't know about you guys, but I'm going to throw it to the floor. What pops into your head when you do think of a Palestinian woman?
Well, at the moment, I think of the war. I mean, think of everything they're going through at the moment, but just they keep on going. They keep on going.
That's it. And when a lot of people say they think of the war, they think about it with sympathy. But when it comes to Palestinian women, it's not sympathy, it's solidarity, it's honor, it's that steadfast resilience that they hold where, it could be raining down bombs, but they're still on the stove making the dinner. You know what I mean? There's nothing that can get in the way, and it's not their first rodeo at all with what goes on within the genocide. Palestinian women are intelligent, they're resilient, they're beautiful. They are, one of those women that you look at in awe, and they inspire and aspire as well. My aspiration and inspiration is to, although I am a Palestinian woman, is to be like my mother, who fled war. My grandmother fled war with 6 young boys, my dad and uncles, bare feet, midst of the night, and built a life for us, and firstly in Jordan, then Kuwait, and then obviously the UK. So when it comes to resilience, and you ask me what does resilience mean to you, I'd always say a Palestinian woman. And to be fair, that's the most that I can give right now. I mean, you see them on the news, you see the little girls growing up far too quickly, you know, having to endure war and genocide and having to be the ones to confront it, to comfort their families as well. They end up becoming the mothers, the aunties, the sisters, the best friends. So yeah, a massive solidarity and shout out to all Palestinian women, both in Palestine and the diaspora.
Yeah. No, that's great. Thank you very much, Haneen. And obviously we honor the whole Palestinian people for what they're enduring at this moment. And you know, it's a major thing of the women's movement for generations to fight for peace and to fight to end imperialism. So thank you very much. Do you want to add any more? Is that? I know you're puffed out from being on the march and chanting.
I know I was leading it as well. I mean, there's so much that I can add. I'm just very conscious about our sisters that are in India and Pakistan. So I don't want to take away too much time from them. But all I can say is, you know, the fight that they put on, inspirational women like Leila Khalid, Shireen Abu Auda, Bisan, all of these people that have put their lives on the line, who, you know, tragically lost them, but also are still going and taking that risk to spread the message that although there's a genocide, you can't take away the resilience and the hope of a Palestinian woman. And I just want to give them a massive shout out because they're the ones that inspire myself and every other young girl to keep going for the fight.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Thank you for starting us off the way we want to go. Apologies to people who we're hearing on the chat that some people couldn't hear. It will be that we do have a recording, and hopefully the other speakers will get through better. Thank you very much. Right, the next speaker I'm going to ask is Maya John. Maya, we don't know each other, I'm sorry, but I hear great things of you from Roger.
It's good to finally meet you virtually, and I look forward to many more conversations with all of you. So I would like to, first of all, thank comrades of Workers' International Network and Left Unity for organizing, you know, this very, very important discussion, bringing together activists from across the world. It's been very hectic, and I had a good laugh when I read Felicity's email where she was apologizing about, you know, being so caught up with work and forgetting to attach a poster with her mail. And that's what it's been like the last 48 hours. You know, we've been going to various neighborhoods, various workplaces, you know, just taking that legacy to as many people as possible, and meeting with women. So it's been hectic, and I'm glad that, you know, I've been given this opportunity to at least have this dialogue, to have this discussion, and in true international sense, with, you know, struggling women activists from across the world and fellow comrades. So thank you for this. What I would like to, of course, bring to today's discussion is, you know, that as we gather to commemorate, you know, another International Women's Day, or very, very specifically International Working Women's Day, to be more precise, if we want to remain true to the history and the legacy of this day's origins, then it, of course, becomes very imperative for all of us to recognize the very important context, very specific, important context within which we, you know, strive to retrieve the legacy of International Women's Day. And just a few observations about this very specific context, contemporaneous time. You know, humanity, as we know, is languishing under war, massive genocide. Many of my fellow activist friends here are going to be speaking in detail about some of those experiences. And of course, it appears that, you know, as human society has, you know, recovered somewhat from the pandemic, we have simply, you know, witnessed the emergence of naked and brute capture of state power by, you know, gang of ruffians, riot mongers, stooges of you know, blood-sucking corporates, and essentially we are seeing a very dangerous political, you know, set of developments where literally a gang of monsters, which many of us, in our writings, in our conversations, variously call fascist, neo-fascist, Trumpism, Modiism, or Sanghism, and so on, to, of course, refer to, all kinds of totalitarian right-wing forces that have captured state power. And this is one dimension to the context in which we are, of course, discussing and retrieving, the legacy of International Working Women's Day. Now, while we have these, political developments that I've just, quickly flagged, we are also seeing at the same time within the larger society the rise of right-wing supremacist groups. And this, I don't have immediate time, and I know many people here as participants know about these details. Comrades know the fact about these groups. And so I would say that alongside the capture of, state power, the society from which, from within which resistance emerges is also, being attempted to be captured by supremacist forces of different hues. So unfortunately, the world, and this is around 8 billion people, of which half are women, is now being controlled by literally a gang of monsters. In other words, I would say with the end of the pandemic, we have entered into an era of a very sinister synergy of very troubling political developments, as well as the onslaught, or let's say further entrenchment of neoliberal economic policies. Now, of course, each of us in different parts of the world know that, different regions have thrown up, their own history, their own historical trajectory of a neoliberal, policy ecosystem falling into place. So, of course, there are certain parts of the world where austerity measures and growing privatization of public services have, been a more recent phenomena, more recent decades have seen this, development in those parts of the world. But in other parts of the world, poorer countries, there has been a much longer history of the state's very minimalist, very limited expenditure. Now, given this kind of broader context, which I've, fleshed out, we know that, while the larger humanity is clearly suffering, it is women who are faced with, of course, a much greater, degree of exploitation and oppression. We know of the double burden borne by the majority of women, and here I'm talking about the majority that is proletarian women. And given that, the class of proletarian women are spread across, different communities, different identities, that's why in the case of literally all forms of oppression, women are ultimately the worse off. Now, within, this larger context in which we're deliberating contemporaneous conditions of the vast majority of women, it becomes important to speak about how there has been an increase, a marked increase in the burden of social reproduction borne particularly by women. And of course, here I mean women of the proletarian masses. With the intensification of privatization of social services, we know that there has been an increased burdening of women with respect to the quantum of housework and familial tasks like childbearing, child rearing, elder care, and so on, that they have to perform. And so literally, despite being half of the world's population, we know that women today hold less than 1% of the world's property. They receive barely 10% of the world's income. Women work 2/3 of the world's working hours, and they suffer from huge time paucity, especially given, the disproportionate burden of housework borne by them. Women are, of course, trapped in the lowest paid, stigmatized jobs in many conditions of employment. We know that women are actually denied even the status of being workers. I work with domestic workers in India, and this is one huge workforce of women, a burgeoning workforce of women. In fact, paid domestic work in this country, and I know my neighboring country, even Sri Lanka. This is a huge industry employing a large number of women, the third largest industry, in fact, in India that employs women. And in fact, many impoverished working class women are, emigrating to the global north for jobs as caregivers. And this is precisely a workforce where, for example, in my country, they're denied the whole status of even being workers. I will, of course, come back a little bit more to this dimension of why, workers like domestic workers are not identified as workers, given the private nature of their contractual relationship with employers. But let me here highlight another very important dimension to the context today in which we are discussing the legacy and relevance of International Working Women's Day. And that is, with respect to the fact that we know in the women's movement, we have the trend of bourgeois liberal feminism, wherein, women of property, privilege, power, position, they are seeking equality within their own class. And needless to say, their freedom and success depends on the overexploitation of a vulnerable other, a proletarian woman. So there is, marked contradiction between women of different classes, which is also a sign of our times. And we have to factor that into our own, analysis in politics. Let me now proceed to highlight that, the current context, of course, while highlighting these intensifying degrees of exploitation and oppression of a majority of women, also shows that, women are not simply victims. They're not just silently suffering. Women are proving to be militant survivors and fighters. And so all around the world, as we see, people's movements in struggle, we do see women in the forefront of these struggles. And many of, my activist friends from these different struggles are here today to discuss their experiences and observations. So it is herein that, I feel that it becomes important to retrieve the legacy of International Working Women's Day, this legacy that is struggle. It's actually a product of a very important moment of struggle. Essentially, we know the origins of this day go back to an era that witnessed the rise of the working class movement. And also this was an era that saw simultaneously the rise of women's power, women coming out forcefully in the public domain. And therefore, I see this as a very crucial combination of these two, which gave rise to, the International Working Women's Day. And so, we know this very rich history that needs to be retrieved, that needs to be recalled again and again. The history of how, the first Women's Day is said to have, emerged in America and New York, given the backdrop of, rising workplace-related accidents and violence, and huge numbers of women workers and children, such as in New York, losing their lives in factory fires. So basically, the labor movement and women as part of the labor movement was so crucial in the early 20th century in, organizing sustained trade union movements, and also bringing working class women's concerns to the forefront of the larger women's movement, and making possible, the making of something like International Working Women's Day. In India, interestingly, in the same period, early 20th century, the colonial British regime, whatever records, archival records we have, very, very interestingly, one comes across how, colonial officials are absolutely taken aback, shocked to see the militancy of, Indian women workers, who were often, in the forefront of strikes, who were often, so militant. They were evolving new methods of stopping work, new forms of protests, like, the sit-ins in the workplace. A technical term for this in Hindi is the ghirao of the workplace. And, very often we find, these accounts of how, women in colonial India as part of the factory workforce, when male workers were being imprisoned or, were proving to be less disciplined to, the trade unions' calls for picketing, etc. It was, women workers who were on the streets, who were taking on and gheraoing, employers and colonial police officers, etc. So, clearly they set in this, a fear somewhere within the colonial administration about the militancy of women workers in India. Of course, we also,
Maya, can I say a couple more minutes? Just a couple more minutes,
sure.
please.
I'm just wrapping up. So, of course, we also know that there's this very important history of how, in Tsarist Russia, the commemoration of International Working Women's Day actually triggered the first phase of the revolution, a revolution that we know changed the face of time. I would like to end with pointing out, that in the present conjuncture, the present context, where we're seeing, rampant privatization of social work, we continue to be confronted by the dominant view, the dominant ideology, which, justifies that this is an issue of men and women. This is a private matter. Importantly, the same prism of domesticity or privatization of social relations is also used to code other hierarchies in society. So in many parts of the world, we find that more and more employer-employee relations are being pushed outside the ambit of state regulation, with the growing justification that such, contractual relations are a private matter. Of course, when it comes to union busting, I think someone's mic is...
Sorry, comrades. I'm going to mute everybody. So the people are speaking. Could you unmute yourself?
Okay.
Okay. 1 second. Sorry.
So, of course,
You have to unmute yourself.
Of course. So while there's this, continuous assertion that employer-employee relations are a private matter of contract, the state is very much there and asserts itself when it comes to union busting, when it comes to defending the power, privilege, and property of employers. The state steps in and actively and brutally represses the resistance of workers. So similarly, in the same lens of privatization, and this justificatory ideology of privatization, you see how international conflicts, again, you see this dominant discourse. Then this is a conflict between two nations. This is a conflict, private matter between an oppressor nation and an oppressed nation. So thus, we proclaim on a day like this, we proclaim when we are reclaiming the legacy of International Working Women's Day, that what happens between men and women, what happens between employers and employees, what happens between oppressor nations and oppressed nations are not a private matter. This is a universal matter, an international matter. And that's what the whole assertion of the 200 years history of the working class movement and proletarian women's movement has been, that what happens between social entities, what happens between different social groups is not private, but rather these are all to be made public. And for us, our public is the whole community, our international. It is only in this assertion, I believe, that we retrieve not just Women's Day. That is, we don't just simply commemorate the day, but we commemorate the international dimension of this day. We proclaim on this day that nothing is private. We are all involved. And so when women fight back, they actually bear the whole humanity when fighting back. The future is ours. Long live our unity. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. That was very moving. Thank you. And our next speaker is Kate Hudson. And we live in an epoch of war that few of us have seen before. So Kate.
Thanks very much, Felicity, and greetings to all women on the occasion of International Women's Day. And I know we're all particularly sending our love and solidarity to all the women who are experiencing the hardship, the suffering, the deprivations of war. And of course, I want to particularly pay tribute to the women of Palestine and to say how good it is to hear from Haneen today. So thank you very much for that. So I just want to start off by just reminding us about what the women in Palestine are experiencing, because what strikes me is how little coverage now we are receiving about the genocide that is ongoing there, about the Israeli forces coming back to Palestine and refusing to go into the second phase of the ceasefire. So it's such a live issue that's getting so little coverage. But let's today just remember that over 12,000 Palestinian women have been killed. Nearly 14,000 women have been widowed. 17,000 mothers have lost one or more of their children. 50,000 women have been forced to give birth in inhumane and unhealthy conditions without adequate access to medical care. And I know there are people on this call who are very active in terms of women's health, and that's a real blow, a tragedy for all of us to know what those women in Palestine are suffering. So let's carry on with our work in support of the people of Gaza and all the Palestinian people and the women in those conditions. So we pay tribute to their resistance and their strength in this context. And so I want to just pick up just for a couple of minutes, if I can, Felicity, about women's resistance to war and about their role in the peace movement. And of course, we know it has long roots. It goes back to the 17th century, probably far beyond that, but historical records are very limited in terms, as we know, of women's history. But of course, the women's peace movement as such most prominently emerged during the First World War. And something that struck me particularly is the parallel between the socialist movement and the women's movement at that time. And in both cases, the vast majority of both movements backed the war in spite of previous policies. And of course, we're very aware of that in terms of the socialist movement, because the traditions of many of us here, date back to socialist resistance to the workers or the working class so-called leaders who backed that imperialist war. But of course, there were exceptions, and the women's movement, it was the same. Most of the suffragettes and that movement actually went in there, all guns blazing, supporting the kind of patriotic thing of the First World War. But there were some exceptions, and we'll all know how Sylvia Pankhurst was an inspiring exception in both cases, both as a socialist and as a suffrage supporter and a great campaigner for women's rights, working women's rights in particular. And looking back at that, of course, I'm always touched by the scale of hostility to anti-war women. And of course, that's not just confined to then, it's something that anti-war women, and in fact, all anti-war campaigners at different times kind of suffer huge hostility because of their opposition to war. But what inspires me about that time is the way a new women's peace movement came together. And they actually, in the middle of the war in 1915, they organized a massive international women's conference in The Hague, and there were over 1,000 participants. And that actually gave rise to the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, which is still going strong today. Of course, specifically socialist women were also active then. They came together from all the warring countries around about the same time in 1915. And that initiative was linked to the International Socialist Women's Committee that had been organized by Clara Zetkin in 1907. So these political strands were coming together and finding expression both through socialism and the kind of pro-peace perspective. And of course, that's something we've seen in subsequent decades as well. the 1960s, with the developing women's liberation movement in the US in particular, together with the civil rights movement, the anti-Vietnam War movement. They made a big impact in anti-war struggles. The 1970s and 1980s, I guess quite a few of us here would have been active politically around that time. Will remember how prominent women were in the big anti-war and anti-nuclear movements, and also how they embraced diverse and creative forms of campaigning. And this is, don't want to go into any thoughts about why, but very often women in their campaigning and their political activism can be much more, let's say, diverse and creative in the forms of activity. So people know about the rise of women's peace camps, particularly Greenham, for example, here in Britain. I expect some people on this call were at Greenham Common at the peace camp there. And it was really notable for its rejection of establishment norms and behaviours, and standing up courageously against imperialism, against militarism and brutality. And they too inspired subsequent generations of women. So to conclude, Felicity, as we're celebrating women today, I want to end by reading a short press account of the first major trial of the Greenham women in 1983, because it shows just how the establishment didn't know how to deal with the Greenham women, but also the kind of determination and great courage and also humour of those women, and the way they continued that campaign for many, many years, I should say, camping at the Greenham military base. So this is the quote, which I'll finish with. The magistrates had left the court to consider their decision. Inside, 44 women were on trial. At the back of the room sat a score of women supporters. As the magistrates walked out, 30 police officers unexpectedly filed in and, standing shoulder to shoulder, lined up in front of the supporters, preventing them from seeing the defendants and presumably from engaging in one of those willful and anarchic gestures against authority, which have been the women's hallmark so far. Reacting in unspoken accord, defendants and supporters rose, stood on their chairs, and leaning over the police officers' heads, held hands. Then they began and continued to sing after the magistrates had returned, banged their gavels and cried in exasperation, "Ladies, please." So thank you very much, and happy International Women's Day to everybody.
Happy International Women's Day, Kate, and thank you very much for that. It was good to laugh at that at the end. It's because we have to remember to misbehave. Yes. We urge this meeting to resistance. Yeah. Can we move to Marcia, please? Can Marcia speak next? Are you still here, Marcia?
Yeah, I'm here.
I will try and put up the. Shall I put up the slides we agreed, or do you want to just speak? It's up to you.
Yeah, I think as I speak, you can put on the slides.
Okay. I'm going to give me 1 second to get this sorted, because I wasn't good beforehand when I was sharing the hang on a second. Right. Sorry for the technical problems. Somehow my slideshow is taking up the screens, and I don't know why. Get that rid of that one. Sorry.
Okay.
Apologies. I'll get it in a minute. Sorry, Marcia. I'm so sorry. I will get this in a minute. working. Right, I've got you. I can't get the. Let's get rid of that page. So you'll try and get the next the slides up now. Share. That's right. Somebody help me. How do I pull the second screen up?
Or maybe
Click share. What happens next? Why is it not going?
we can
Just start talking, and I'll prompt you. Start talking, and we'll sort this out.
Okay. I first want to thank the two comrades that prepared this for us, and also greetings to all the other comrades that have made it, and especially to the woman that is here with us or that is sharing their experiences, and also giving information, or yeah, let me just say information to the rest of us. So what I will be sharing with you is basically what I have experienced or what happened to me, how I was victimized, and how I ended up losing my job. So it all started when most of us as employees, we are unaware, or we are not educated on our rights.
Is everyone frozen? Oh, okay.
Marcia is working from a phone. She had her laptop stolen, so she's working entirely, doing this whole struggle on her phone. Marcia, I tell you what, we'll move on to the next speaker and come back to Marcia. Marcia? No, we'll move on to the next speaker. Marcia is in a very difficult situation, but she's doing wonderfully in how she's fighting it. Can I ask, please, that Vera speaks next? Oh, you've come back. Sorry.
I don't know, my network is cutting. Yeah, but anyway, so we got this knowledge. We started to understand how things work. We started to understand what actually steps we should be taking. So even though we got this information, among us, the workers, there were still those who were frightened to take the step forward, to go forward, to speak, and to ask questions, and so there came a day, at a time, where we approached the employer. We asked him, but Madam Boss, how come we are getting this? We are getting paid like this, but then by law, this is what the law says, and so. But then every time we approach these employers, they just victimize whoever is asking them such questions. They get victimized. They get dismissed from work, and so up to a point we decided to go to the authorities to engage. We engaged with one of the authorities who is actually responsible for the equity commissioner. So he is actually responsible for taking reports from the company on which states how the employers are paying its employees, and so we asked him if he can organize the meeting with us, the employees and the employer. So he wrote it on email, letter, He mailed it. They responded. They gave a date on which they could be available. So there was 2023, the 19th, that we actually had to go sit. And on that specific day, the company or the employer didn't show up. Not showing up, we went on. We gave our complaints to the equity commissioner, and then the employer decided, okay, they will not come and speak with us. They prefer speaking alone with the equity commissioner. So we thought that was not fair. That was not good enough from them. So, however, the commissioner proceeded, and whilst he was gone, the media came in. We started speaking out to the media how oppressed we felt, how the company made us feel, and so now when those things were released on the media, so our employer saw this. They saw, this is Marcia speaking, this is Peter speaking, this is Thomas speaking. Let's suspend all these employees that had something to say on the media. So we were charged, we were given charges that we are putting the company's name into disrepute. We are putting the employer's name into disrepute. So those were the charges that we got, and we were about 5, I think, who got suspended because of speaking to the media. And so, yeah, the video, I think Comrade Velicity will share the video with the other comrades later. Actually, the words that I spoke on that day, I ended up, we all went through the hearing process. All my other colleagues got their findings, and also those that were found guilty were given final warnings, returned to work. And my findings specifically were kept, I don't know why, for a long time, maybe for like 2-3 months. I couldn't get my findings until I had to go to the labor inspectors. And I had to force them to call the company and demand for my findings. The HR who answered or responded to the calling, confessed actually and said, no, the findings from Marcia are already out. But then he can also not share the findings with me because the director of the company was not happy with the outcome. So that time I believed I already knew that my findings were actually, I was found not guilty. And then they still kept me on suspension. From the international activists and some of the national activists, I filed a case, or I referred the case for unfair labor practices with the employment or with the labor commissioner. Just after opening this or referring this case, I was called in for a meeting with the employer. They told me, Marcia, we will keep you, or we have kept you on suspension up to date, because even though you are on suspension, you continue committing or doing things which is against the policy of the company. And so your findings, the very first findings, you were not found guilty, but we will give you other charges because you went on to the international activists. They are posting things, they are sending emails to us, and so, which is against the company's policy. So they gave me new other 3 charges again. And the charges that came out for the second time was basically just the same, almost the same like the first one. So I felt it was just a double jeopardy, or they were just victimizing me or just trying to get rid of me. So that was the case. Now, in my second hearing, I thought they will be taking me back to the same company that shared the first hearing. But in this case, it was someone totally different, someone from a foreign country. So yeah, so to me, the whole process was just corrupt. It was just a corrupt process that took place. So I went through this second hearing, and then they found me guilty of all the 3 charges. And finally, I was dismissed. After my dismissal, just to bring it to your attention, I was on suspension for 7 months. 7 months, that's from 2023 October up to 2024 last year now in May. That's the period that I was kept on suspension without full salary. So that's the struggle that I went through. I also referred unfair dismissal case again with the labor commissioner, and we are currently busy with it. So that's actually the struggle that we Namibians are facing, especially the women, especially those that cannot speak up for themselves. Many people have lost their jobs through this process. So what I've also picked up, or what I've also learned, is that if the employees would be educated, or if we can how should I say, if we can just find ways to get more education to the employees, I think it will improve the workers' conditions. It will improve. Then also the employees will know that the employers will know that if I do this, they will defend themselves because they now have the knowledge. So after this experience, I've also decided to join one of the unions here in Namibia. So, but then this union is based in Windhoek, which is the capital city, and I'm a bit in another town, like about 400 something kilos from Windhoek. So now we were planning to open a branch here in where I am, but then we also have we are struggling actually to get this office opened. And what they actually want is for me to start working in this office, or to start working for this particular region where I am. And that's also another struggle on its own. But then we are hoping to find means, of making this possible. I don't know whether Comrade Felicity.
Felicity, you're muted.
Sorry, that's me getting all flustered because I can't bring the PowerPoint up. But thank you very much, Marcia. I think you've made your point, and I have to say I've been in touch with Marcia for quite a while now, and the way she just keeps on going, trying to build this union, trying to get justice is fantastic.
And also, one thing also which happened after my dismissal, one thing that we actually fought for after I got dismissed, it was a minimum wage for the security industries. That's now the industry in which I was working. Their wage, they've been getting an $8 for about 7 years now. Now all the other sectors or industries are getting increasement for 7 years. The security industry never got increasement. So last year we fought for an increasement, and finally the government accept a minimum wage of $18 per hour. But then still there are some of the companies that are refusing to pay the employees So we are still fighting for these companies that are refusing to either to be taken out or to be forced to pay the employees on that minimum wage. So yeah, that's my conclusion.
That's great. Thank you very much, Marcia. I'm conscious of time, comrades, so that if I'm a bit stricter with the next set of speakers, it's just to make sure we get everybody in. Our next speaker, Vera. Vera, can you talk to us about what you've been doing in Pakistan?
Hi, am I audible?
You are.
Okay. Thanks, Felicity. And it's really nice to meet and listen to so many comrades here and their struggle, especially thanks to Marika, that she has shared her story, what she is being through and what she is facing. And everywhere, the same situation we are facing, especially the women workers are facing everywhere. Even in Pakistan, the female workers they don't have the appointment letters. They have like 95% women don't have the appointment letter, and many workers. I think I could say it's 99% women are hired on the third party contract system, which means that you don't have the direct link with your employer. Who is your employer, for whom you are working, for which brand you are working, or for which market you are working. Then there is another issue with the female workers in Pakistan, that most of the workers are not registered under the social security scheme. Like we have the health scheme as well, we have the pension scheme, but majority women's are not registered with those social security scheme. So everywhere the issue is same, but still we are fighting and still we are raising our voice to get some kind of relief from the government and with the state, basically. So we are keep fighting on this. If I will go to tell my story or what we are doing here, so it will make much long time I need for that. But it's more important here, Felicity, I think we have to discuss regarding uh, like some kind of a solidarity we need, because what the all comrades have said here, I completely agree with them, and it's really I think I agree with every point which is raised by every comrade here. So I think this is a good initiative, and we have to work on this, that the solidarity among all of us. Like if we face anything in Pakistan or in India, then we have to stand together. We have to make one day action day for everything. So I think it will make some kind of a change. So my suggestion would be, we have to build solidarity with the labor movement globally. And if we can make this kind of a thing, then it's really make all of us, like we get some kind of a support from each other, and we will resolve some kind of a issue as well. So for me, the takeaway would be, I think that we should have to build some kind of a solidarity now. And like after 1 month or 2 months, we all sit together and discuss different things. Like there is a war, there is a, like the fascist tendency is growing now in whole Europe. There is a surge of the right wings. So and now I think you might have listened about that. We from Pakistan and even in the Europe, our comrades have fight for the due diligence law. But now the EU Commission has bring the omnibus bill, and they are watering down all the things. Like they have eliminated the civil liability on the companies or the multinational companies. So I think we have to fight for this one, and we have to raise this issue everywhere. And even similarly, the South Asia is facing one issue, like the international organizations like the ILO. What they are doing, they are bringing, like they like I think I completely say this one. The one thing, it's like a labor code, which is introduced by the ILO in India, in Bangladesh, in Nepal, in Sri Lanka as well, and now in Pakistan. So they are legalizing the third party contract system. They are legalizing the contractual system. They are saying in Pakistani law, they are saying that they have to introduce like the force labor kind of a thing, that that the employer should give the advance money to the workers, and the worker should work whole life as a slave to their employer. So this kind of law we should have to resist everywhere. So we need the solidarity among the regional level as well and at international level. So this is my, I think, I must say this one.
Thank you, Sarah. That's very concerning. Yeah, and we will have to meet again and discuss some of this in detail. I think so. So is that your contribution? That's fine. Thank you.
Yeah, it's fine because it's fine because everyone is saying the same thing. So we all are facing the same thing. So now we have to do some kind of a action kind of a thing. We have to go to that one.
Okay, so that's one of the takeaways from this meeting, is we've got to get some discussion going about how we build the internationalism in practice for workers at the moment. Thank you. Right, can I ask Ms. Jin to speak next? I'm sorry if I've said it wrong. I've tried practicing saying it several times.
No, it's okay.
Can I introduce Ms. Jin? We've met several times, and we're both based in Liverpool. But Ms. Jin's going to speak to us about the situation for the Kurds and the Kurdish struggle. And I think all of us sort of cheer when we see the steps towards equality that women in the Kurdish struggle have had. And we want to, we know it's not perfect, but it is a bit of an inspiration. So thank you. Will you tell us about your struggle?
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me for this meaningful platform, and happy International Women's Day to everyone on this platform. First, I want to talk a little bit explain how the Kurdistan's freedom movement started, and then I want to talk about the ideas and perspectives of Kurdistan women's freedom movement. So basically, the PKK, Kurdistan Workers' Party, started a freedom struggle in Kurdistan. It was formed as a Marxist-Leninist party organization in 1978, and it started a guerrilla warfare against the Turkish state in 1984, with the aim of establishing a state to liberate all of colonized Kurdistan. In 1999, the Kurdish leader Abdullah Öcalan was abducted to Turkey in NATO-led operation. He has since been held captive on the prison island of İmralı in Turkey. As early as the mid-1990s, the movement began to discuss, critique, and abandon the ideas of establishing an independent Kurdish nation state, and ever since embarked on a journey to theorize and realize non-state forms of self-determination. In 2005, Abdullah Öcalan declared from prison his proposal to build democratic confederalism, a system which is based on autonomous self-organization realized through communes, assemblies, cooperatives, academies, congresses, which is a model side and against and despite the nation-state framework. The organized and coordinated struggle to build along these ideas, Öcalan's democratic, ecological, and women's liberationist paradigm is thereafter referred to as Kurdistan Freedom Movement. Democratic confederalism is currently being built up in different parts of Middle East and diaspora. However, it is a project not only for the Kurds, but offered for a discussion to peoples and movements around the world. Parallel to enshrining women's liberation in all spheres of the struggle, the movement builds on autonomous women's system from the bottom up towards the horizons of world democratic women's confederalism. as a way of organizing a 21st century internationalism against patriarchal and statist power. At its core, it is led by decades-old Revolutionary Party with devoted militant cadres. Kurdish women open a new page in a world history, especially in the war against ISIS. The woman-led Rojava Revolution, which is in the north and east Syria, is a model of free society, which proves that women's democratic modernity is a viable alternative and a source of hope worldwide. The following revolution in Iran, which was led by the Kurdish people after the murder of Jina Amini and the slogan Jin Jan Azadi, women, life, freedom, has reverberated across the world. The slogan was inspired by the writings of Abdullah Öcalan. So when it comes to ideas and the perspective of the Kurdish women's liberation movement, finds revolution not as a destructive single day in a calendar, but as a long-term struggle to dismantle all form of domination in society, to therefore enable liberated social relations. The revolution is framed as being about democratizing everyday relations of life between groups inside society, between societies, and between human societies and nature. In the movement's literature, forceful criticism are directed towards the authoritarian character of historical socialist projects, criticizing all the socialist schools' fascination with modernity and the state. The movement claims to lead a paradigmatic struggle against capitalist modernity, i.e., the ideological, cultural, and social project that dominates and colonizes contemporary human imagination. Instead of aspiring to establish new power-centric regimes, revolutionary institutions and perspectives should create conditions to restore moral, political reflexes that society lost to the state, capitalism, and patriarchy. Organization is the key to this. Protests and resistance are seen as insufficient to break the systematic wars waged against women, people, and nature. Formless, erratic rebellion, as well as critique that is not backed by organizational capacity, are both seen as expression of defeatism. Instead of becoming secondary wing of larger struggles, those who are the most oppressed must become the radicalizing force that pulls the rest along. Because the 5,000-year-old domination of women is seen as the oldest and most profound form of oppression and intrinsically linked to the institutionalization of other injustices in human society. The movement views women's liberation not only as an end in itself, but also as a central method to society's liberation as a whole. The movement also claims to be a struggle for men's liberation from the violent templates imposed on all of society under patriarchy. Killing dominant masculinity is regarded as a strategic objective in the movement's works, as manifested in its activity, educations, culture, and media. In this
Can I ask you to wind up in just a minute, please?
Yeah. In this sense, the Kurdistan Freedom Movement claims to struggle against several layers of colonization. At the stake, it is not merely Kurdistan's liberation from specific states, rather life must be decolonized from power. When framed as mobilization or identity, grounded and fluid, like life itself, womanhood can be a platform to struggle against structures of violence and domination. It can create spaces for formation of more complex personhoods, diverse identities, and more liberational liberationist relations. On this occasion of International Women's Day, I commemorate all women that lost their lives in the struggle for freedom and equality. As a Kurdistan Women's Movement, we send our revolutionary greetings to all freedom-seeking women and recommit to transforming our century into the age of women's liberation. Thank you very much, Felicity.
Thank you very much. That was a really interesting contribution. Thank you so much. And I was thinking, listening, that we must continue each of these conversations. We can't leave just each bit left going, even if we can't do it today. So can I ask Jabu to speak next, please? Jabu is she lives in Oxford, but she's from South Africa, and her mum was a heroine of the liberation struggles in South Africa. So, Jabu?
Greetings all. Can you hear me?
You can.
I greet you all, sisters, on behalf of Women's International Day. Here in Oxford, it's sunny, but it's now going down. And Felicity, I love to see your puppy behind you there. And what I have to say, really, it's, I said to Felicity when she asked me to come and speak, I said I always like to bring my mother's spirit into these meetings. My mother was a General Secretary of MAU in South Africa, which is now NUMSA. So we came to live in England, Oxford, in 1984 at the height of the miners' strike. My mother was one of the leaders of the 1973 strikes in South Africa. So we are now in the year 2025, where Trump is back in power, which is really worrying for women in terms of his views, being a misogynist as well as being a racist. So Trump being back in power, what does it mean for many socialists? For me, as a Black African working class woman, it feels like when we say decolonize, now they are saying recolonize. I have stood in Oxford as a city councillor for over 4 years and since resigned over the issue, over the genocide in Gaza. Many of us, almost 10 councillors, resigned in 2023 from the Labour Party as the infamous Stammer comment on Israel had a right to defend itself. So what has that meant for us as a socialist in the Oxford area, which is not where I reside? Although personally, having been raised in South Africa, I thought we'd seen the back of apartheid, let alone be in a party that had a leadership that was condoning the state of Israel. So living in the middle of this genocide has meant that, for me, physically and mentally, I've felt that all the issues that we thought we had put behind us, reliving the experiences of apartheid, has been really, really hard. But also just now, basically leaving the Labour Party and feeling that I now have no political home, because I thought the Labour Party represented what the workers stood for. But contrary to what we'd gone into the Labour Party to do, Stammer regime had really changed and basically made some of us feel unwelcome in the Labour Party. So for us, we are now in the situation where we have to redefine ourselves, redefine our movement, redefine our autonomy as far as our political legions are concerned. So in Oxford, we are now called the Oxford Independent Socialist Party. But the challenges were really shown during the last general election of 2024, where we were challenging the current MP, who's since resigned, over the international aid, Annalise Dodds, the issue there was the fact that we faced so many independent parties that had come in to actually contest that seat. The election system in England has got, if you really go into it, is really, really unfair to the working classes or those people that do not understand the selection processes. First of all, if you are not a member of a party, you cannot call yourself independent socialist or independent what. So it's really important to understand this context, because what that means is that it's really, really hard to differentiate yourself from an independent alliance, which a lot of them have got fascist tendencies. They've got migrant, what you call bashing issues. So it's been a real challenge, but also we faced a real challenge from a perspective of being socialist, because there were many other parties that are socialist oriented. For instance, we had the Workers' Party, which is the leader is George Galloway. So we had almost 4 independents who were coming from a socialist orientation who stood in the party. So this presented us with a real challenge. Then after the election, we had to do a review and talk about how we as socialists in Oxford, we can coexist and basically try and form a situation whereby we can work together. For instance, we are now May the 1st, we have the what you call county elections that are coming up. So we needed to understand how we can work together so that we don't stand against each other and polarize the votes as socialists. So we had a really good, interesting meeting in November where all the socialist parties came together in Oxford to really talk about where we are. And it was interesting because the theme of the party was really, the theme of the meeting was really to understand what we have in common as socialists. And I think 80% of the time where we kind of looked at what we believe in, we found that we had more in common. So the meeting was really positive because it was discussing the coming elections in May, and they were able to divide Oxford to just basically understand which party will stand where, and no socialist party will challenge other socialists in that area. This was really, really positive from a perspective of really trying to now build a base for socialism. We believe that it's really important to be present even during elections to speak to our neighborhoods, our communities, even though we understand that the election system is rigged in terms of what we can do. As a city councillor for 4 years, I found that a lot of the issues, whilst I was in the Labour Party, it was very, very difficult to push, like people who don't understand being a councillor. They think that you do have the power to do a lot of things, like that they have problems with in terms of housing, in terms of issues that the violence of austerity brought into our neighborhoods, especially around gentrification, about taking away community spaces. But I found when I was a city councillor, I had very little power to do a lot of that, apart from just defying the whip, which we did a couple of times. And I think it is what sealed my fate in terms of challenging the party governance within Oxford. So the election, we still think it's important for people to understand what socialism is about. So that is why we feel even for the May elections, we will put up candidates. I'm also standing again in the county to challenge, but also from a perspective of talking about internationalism and bringing issues around what is happening in Palestine, what is happening across the world, where a lot of workers are facing exploitation and the real rise of this neoliberal fascist agenda that we see across the world. So I'm not going to say more in terms of what I've said, and I see that women like Maya and Marcia have really talked about issues around workers' exploitation across the world. So my role really in Oxford has been just to really now agitate around issues of making sure that people take on the political system and feel represented. But also, more than anything, I'm still fighting on different fronts. I'm still fighting around the criminal justice system issues. I'm fighting around, cost of living crisis. I'm fighting around wages. So all I have to say to all the sisters, the brothers who are here, aluta continua. We will continue to resist capitalism, this aggression that we see across the world. We'll continue to resist the new, well, it's not new, it's the old imperialist agenda to continue to exploit the working masses at the expense of enriching themselves. We have so many billionaires that it is disgusting. Whilst the poor are getting poorer, the richer are getting richer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jabu. Each contribution makes me think again about something else. So thank you very much. Our final speaker is Swasthika. So Swasthika is from Sri Lanka, and again a workers' leader. Can you give us your greetings and your report?
Hi, Felicity. Thank you for having me, and happy International Women's Day to all. My data and my connection is a bit poor, so if I get stuck or something, please feel free to cut me off. I don't because of I don't want to disrupt the meeting. But just I've been listening to all the speakers before me, and both the political narrative, the historical narrative, as well as personal, very, very personal stories of workers and the challenges they face. I can see the connections in the work we are doing in Sri Lanka, but also in the politics which is happening around Asian countries as well. So I just want to start off with my own experiences in Sri Lanka as a trade union leader and a trade union activist, and the challenges we have faced in organizing women. On this International Women's Day, we had a program today in one of the free trade zones, the export processing zones in Sri Lanka. And this meeting started off with Comrade Maya speaking about the revolutionary history of International Women's Day and how the Women's Day came about and so on. So we were speaking about this to a group of women workers today morning. But what I observed in this meeting was that the economic situation is so bad, the poverty levels are so bad, the working hours are so long. Workers work 12 hours, 14 hours, sometimes even illegally. Companies are extracting working hours from them without pay. The working hours are so long and the wages are so low that women do not have, once they finish work, and Sunday is the only day they have as a time off, they're not in a mindset to think about politics. They're not in a mindset to dream of a better future than what they are living right now. So while we were speaking about International Women's Day and the revolutionary character of International Women's Day, I also observed that women are also caught in struggling to meet their day-to-day needs and expenses and so on. So it is in this context, it is in this contradiction that women do know that they are being oppressed and they are being exploited by capitalist structures and system. But how do you work with women? How do we work as trade unions, as left movements? How do we work with women in this context to get them out of that situation which they find themselves in? So that is the contradiction. That is the primary contradiction which me as a trade union leader, I'm trying to educate myself. What are the tools of organizing which we have to use at this point? educate myself in terms of organizing women of today. Yes, we have to draw from historical lessons. Yes, we have to draw from class struggles. Yes, we have to draw from perhaps even Marxist questions of the workers' inquiry, the 100 questions which he drew out. Maybe we have to learn from those lessons. But what is it that we do now in order to organize women into a revolutionary movement? So that is one thought which I want to park with all of us today on International Women's Day. The other possibly the other thought which I want to perhaps park there is the fact that Sri Lanka is currently governed by I would say a center-right government, but globally they are known as a left government. To date, many people refer to the National People's Power as a left government, but they are not left. They are anti-worker. They are going with the IMF. They are not questioning the IMF. The debt restructuring agreement which the government has entered into is against workers. The entire burden of the debt crisis has been put on the working class of Sri Lanka. So they're not left in any sense. And yet they are portrayed as this left government. And the reason I keep marking that point and saying that this is not a left government, what we have in Sri Lanka, is that this government will inevitably fail by their own inability to take strong decisions on very vital matters such as debt in Sri Lanka. So they feel it's not one that this government failed because they left government. We don't need that on us. We're managing a huge struggles in Sri Lanka. Workers are struggling. The left movement is struggling. So we don't need that on us as well. So I always, wherever I go, I mark that and say, this is not a left government. This is a center government. Origins, but right now they're not left. They're very much and so on. So that's also which I want to mark on this, because before the mediation of we are seeing, for instance, in Sri Lanka, we don't have abortion rights for women. Abortion rights is something which is almost century, but we don't have that in Sri Lanka. This government with majority in parliament is unable to pass it as law without being apologized. Parliament, they refuse to eat.
What you're saying is breaking up quite badly. Could you try speaking without the camera on to see can we get a better bandwidth?
The coverage will be breaking. The coverage has the message.
If you turn your camera off, we might be able to hear you better.
Can you hear me better now?
Much better.
Much better.
Right. Okay. So I'm going to speak with my camera off. So what I was saying is I'm not sure at which point I got cut off, but the government which currently we are ruled under has 2/3 majority in parliament. And 2/3 majority in parliament means they can pass any laws which they want to protect women's rights, to protect the rights of LGBTQ community and so on. They can do anything they want in parliament. And yet this government is stalling on decriminalizing same-sex relationship. Muslim women in this country have been struggling for over a decade for the Muslim marriage and Muslim marriage reforms, Muslim marriage and act, what we call here, reforms with regards to child marriage, with regards to polygamy, with regards to so many aspects of their lives, which is governed by this very patriarchal law. And this government is once again stalling from passing these laws to protect Muslim women from patriarchal abuses and so on. So these are the kind, and then of course, reproductive health and abortion laws in this country. We do not have the right to, we do not have the right of abortion in this country. Abortion is illegal, even if the child is born out of rape or incest, or even if the child has severe deformities. Abortion is illegal in this country. So even that, the government has to be, despite the fact that they have a two-thirds majority, despite the fact that we have seen one of the highest representation of women in parliament today, this government, which is representing the interest of a particular class in society, refuses to look into the well-being of women. So that is on the side of the state. So on the one hand, I spoke about the challenges we are facing in terms of organizing. Then I also spoke about the nature of the state, where it is being characterized as left, but is it actually a working class government, is a question which we have been asking on the ground. And the third aspect, of course, is that with the entire Trump administration coming in, and with the Trump administration canceling USAID funding, I feel this is a good moment for workers' movement in Sri Lanka, because workers' movement have been, I think, has been corrupted and has been managed by donor funding, big donor funding like USAID. So with the USAID being completely cancelled off and pulling out of countries like Sri Lanka, we have a moment for us to reflect on the politics which we have been doing in terms of NGOs taking donor funding in order to so-called organize workers. These are questions which we can reflect on right now. We can ask us, the labor movement in Sri Lanka, which is also heavily NGOized, we can ask the question now, what is the harm which funding like USAID funding and big donor funding have done to the labor movement? I think we have a moment to reflect on organizing women workers. We have the moment to reflect on organizing left politics in Sri Lanka. And I think, despite the fact that as a world we are moving towards, as one of the speakers before me said, fascist tendencies, the world is moving towards that. There are moments, there are opportunities which are emerging for us in the labor movement, in the left movement, to organize and to rethink the way we are going to resist this new far right tendency in the world. So I'm going to leave with that. And once again, happy International Working Women's Day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Swastika. We hear what you say about your government, because we have a similar government that's supposed to be Labour and is so far to the right, it makes you want to vomit. But thank you. Now, we are now at, we've got half an hour before the meeting finishes. So unless I've made the terrible mistake of forgetting to introduce anybody, I'm going to throw the meeting open for discussion. I'll be silenced, you all.
Leslie.
Leslie.
Oh, thank you, comrades. Both thanks to Felicity and Kate and Roger, etc., for organising the meeting, and again, just solidarity and tribute to the women in the room who are fighting, and such great fighters, and women across the world who are struggling against ever more difficult conditions. And I think it's, heartening. We need more discussion on some of these things. For instance, Mergin's contribution, because obviously we're in quite dark times. We know that there's been robbery, literally, of trillions and trillions of dollars from the global south, from the working class, from women, and many gains that took place in the so-called boom years, are being stripped away. And I think one of the things about Europe is the face of Western so-called liberal democracy has truly been ripped off, by Trump, but not only Trump, to show that any gains that women have made, any gains that the working class have made, are quite prepared to just ruthlessly take them away from people, and literally put them in the hands of the billionaires. And we've seen a massive rise in, misogyny's never gone away. We've seen a massive rise in you know, in misogyny. And, you know, in the States, for instance, obviously we've seen a battle going on in the last few years about abortion and contraceptive rights in different states. And, you know, now we have a government that wants to sort of push those taking away of those rights even further. And for all the fact that aid has been used as a political weapon by the Western powers, you know, just even some of the basics like HIV, access to HIV treatment in South Africa, and contraception family planning help just being literally stripped away. You know, it really shows that capitalism internationally does not want to give one penny to make life better for you know, for women and for working class people. And obviously we've seen now in the West, you know, any idea of that we're not going to be on a war footing, that, you know, gains that were made for you know, for so-called liberal democracy, and we'd have a little bit of welfare state. Well, obviously that was getting taken away in austerity, but now it's directly out of the mouths of children, out of the mouths of disabled and sick people, into bullets and bombs, you know, to cut benefits in a so-called by a so-called Labour government, directly to go to arms spending. That really reveals, you know, it's not even a pretense of any kind of reform being given by capitalism. It's just, we're coming for you, and we're coming for every gain you've ever made. And particularly, you know, if you're disabled, if you're sick, if you're a woman, anything else, we're coming, you know, we're coming, you know, we're coming for you. And that's a bit of an eye-opener for, you know, for a lot of people. And the final point I'd make as well, just about the stripping away of the pretense of liberal democracy. In Germany yesterday, there was big International Women's Day demonstrations, and obviously, you know, particularly around the theme of Palestine and linking all that international struggle up. And the German police just went in and waded, literally physically waded into those women. So again, any pretense that we've got a democracy, we know that that's been undermined by arresting pro-Palestine protesters, but again, sort of publicly just laying into women because they dared to go out on the street and raise the idea of Palestine and International Women's Day. You know, that's what we're up against. But I think with the spirit of solidarity and fight that we've got in this room that's been shown elsewhere, there is hope. But obviously we have to discuss ways of mobilising that in a practical way to build the movement. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else want to come in to speak? I'm not sure I'm seeing it very well. Right. If not, then I'm going to say a little bit for myself. Roger introduced me as that I was involved with the campaign in Liverpool in the 80s, where we had an elected city council on a socialist programme, and where the councillors took on the government, fought the government, but fought the government with the people of the city behind us. And it was brief years before we were bitterly defeated, along with the miners being bitterly defeated. But in that time, we saw a little glimpse of what it's like when the class is working together, and you saw action. We built more than 6,000 council houses. We demolished we repaired about 6,000 houses and demolished a whole load of houses that were unfit for living. And that was in a number of years. It was an immediate thing. But, and this goes a bit to what Swasthika was saying about how do you organise people when things are just so bad. We had things planned before we won the elections. We knew where we wanted to build the houses, how we were going to build the houses, and what we were going to do before we won the elections. And then, so we went in with plans, and we went in with a very strict political discipline. the decisions of the council were made at the district Labour Party meetings, which could be up to 400 people. So councillors had to follow those rules made democratically by the movement. And our women's section, when Leslie was a big leader of the women's movement at that time in Liverpool, that was very, very important for keeping the movement going and so it was a constant conversation between the people either at work for the council or the people who needed houses or the people in the big social movements. There was a constant conversation going on. And I think that idea is, okay, we had that brief experience of it, and it was a brilliant brief experience, and struggles continued since then. But maybe one other thing I'd say is that the workers' movement comes at a time when you don't expect it. We've got to be ready for a workers' movement to happen. And I constantly go back to the story of Eleanor Marx, Karl Marx's daughter, who was deeply personally involved in the struggle of working class women in London as they unionized. But as they unionized in waves. It didn't come with, oh, we have this meeting here, we have this meeting here. There was a huge wave of anger, and that tide took up the socialist boat and floated the socialist boat, floated the movement's boat. So can I also say that I think that from this meeting, we need to keep these links and build them so we can get links with women in many other parts of the world as well, and have serious discussions between ourselves about how we can build the movement. There was I think it was Meryl Streep was on social media this morning talking about the situation in Afghanistan and saying that when she graduated from college in 1973, the women of Afghanistan had had the vote for 50 years. But the women of Switzerland had only just got it. That, Afghanistan had most of its civil servants, most of its teachers, most of its medics were women before the repression that came with the Taliban. And we know America funded the Taliban, built the Taliban and all the rest of it. But to think of how much they've lost, how much the women of Afghanistan have lost, where they're no longer even allowed to go to the park, is absolutely crucial that we get this fight going and get it going with all of our intelligence, all of our cooperation, to see what we can do to rebuild the socialist movement in the way it was built, the women's socialist movement in the way it was built in the past. So I think I'll leave my contribution at that. Is there any of the brothers who would like to contribute? No? Any of our speakers want to come back? Marcia, you said you wanted to ask a question.
Yeah, I think, I don't know whether I heard correctly when Maya said she is actually I don't know, she's doing a business, or she's running a domestic worker business, or she's recruiting domestic workers for other people, or I don't know what she meant about it. And then she also mentioned something like she also has activists that will share or give their experiences. And so now what I wanted to ask is she in the recruiting, is she, how should I put it? Let me say, she is, for instance, doing this business, recruiting people to do domestic work for other people. What does she do?
Maya, could you come back and explain?
Hello, am I audible?
Hiya. Maya, did you hear the question?
Yes, I heard the question. I think there's some echo. Is this better now?
Yes, better.
Yeah, okay. Comrade Marcia, I work with the trade union of domestic workers, which means that I'm not part of any recruitment of domestic workers. I'm in fact organizing domestic workers in India, particularly in the region of the capital city, Delhi, so that they can, of course, not only improve their working conditions, but also, helping propel and change the way we look at this domain of work, which is a highly unregulated domain of work, which is highly privatized. And so, as a trade unionist, I actually see a lot of domestic workers enslaved, actually, because many domestic workers in regions like India are actually in 24/7 contracts. That means 24-hour. They are at the beck and call of employers, which is an arrangement which, many of us, and I, of course, as a trade unionist, see as nothing less than slavery, because what actually identifies who is a worker is quantifiable labor time. So of course, I'm coming from that kind of background, which is organizing struggling domestic workers, and also rethinking about how we can change the way this, whole domain of work functions. So for example, our trade union pushing very hard towards what, one calls as municipalization of domestic work, which means that you bring in the state, which is such a fleeting presence in this work relationship, by actually getting the local government, the municipal government, to actually be the center for recruitment and regulation of the work contracts, something which also not only protects domestic workers' rights, but also facilitates poorer household, working class households where women need support in terms of someone else stepping in to do this difficult housework for them, especially when they're unwell, or are young mothers, or managing other kinds of domestic needs. Just being able to have that kind of labor available for your own home, working class household, which is paid by the state, which is paid for by the state, not by the individual household. So also being able to change the nature of who their employer is in paid domestic work. That's the kind of politics and commitment that one represents.
No, it's actually interesting to hear that you are fighting for the domestic workers, because in our country, I haven't seen any union or trade union that is actually fighting for the domestic workers. But there was a time when the government implemented a minimum wage for the domestic workers. But then this time around, I don't think they are getting any attention to that extent. It actually also gives me the idea to also try and do the same for them if everything goes well.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can I pull the meeting towards its end?
Can I
think
just
there's
quickly
been-
respond, Felicity, to one
Sure,
thing
of
that
course,
Marcia
Maya.
mentioned about minimum wages?
Yeah.
You see, the fact is that, I think very importantly, for, trade unions today, in which, we're, for example, organizing workforces of women, like in paid domestic work, the intervention cannot be limited to just simply trying to quantify how much minimum wage would be given to a workforce like this. But it's a much larger struggle. It's about actually, when you have to realize that there are lots of domains of work, such as paid domestic work, which is going to be actually very difficult to also quantify, given the highly privatized nature of the workplace. It's someone's home, for example. So the point is to how to intervene as trade unions, as progressive organizations, to ensure that this very privatized work is made a public work, right? And that is only possible if you change the nature of who the employer is, right? And in that regard, I would also say that it's a transformation of the work process itself, and it's actually then what will enable us to actually fulfill what our revolutionary sisters like Clara Zetkin and many other people said, that that's the nature of certain work such as housework or domestic work. It's that last vestiges of very, very exploitative, oppressive work, that's domestic work, that we really need to relook at and see how we can reimagine, restructure. And so I say that more than this being left into a private kind of arrangement, which we then try to, through piecemeal laws, minimum wages, try and regulate, we just change the nature of this work by making it public work. It's something that the local government has to arrange for, and it's the local government that becomes the pressure point where domestic workers can organize more easily, protest, strike, and push for higher wages and better work conditions. And of course, the larger working class households can also access such labor because it's paid for by the local government itself. So that's a clarification.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that, Maya. Would anyone else like to speak before I do pull everything towards the end? I know Roger wants to say something at the end of the meeting. No. Okay. So we've had some really very interesting contributions. I want to make sure this is followed up. I think I'd like us to continue the discussions, and I circulated to the speakers saying, is it okay if I share mutually share our emails? I hope that's acceptable. Please let me know if it's not. But I will mutually share the emails so people can help each other. We'll do an appeal for financial support for Marcia. And again, I will send out, how you can support Marcia's work. If we could get that office for the union set up and working, it would be beginnings of things improving significantly in that area. And I think it's hilarious that not nice hilarious, but nasty hilarious, that an international company thinks it's a disciplinary issue if workers appeal to international support. It's internationalism for the bosses and not for the workers. But we really have covered some fascinatingly important topics today. From Maya, from Swasthika, from Merdzin, lots and lots of key issues we've got to continue to discuss. So thank you, and we celebrate International Women's Day. I will call Roger in now. Roger.
Yeah, thank you, comrades. First of all, I think it's been a really inspiring meeting. We see such enthusiasm and such talent and such dedication from women comrades around the world. And I think that's a reflection of the new role in the last few, you could say in the last few decades, but the way that women now have become not only an integral part of the labour movement, but at the forefront of the labour movement in many ways, and in many cases the most militant, the most self-sacrificing, the most courageous, and that has been reflected very well in this meeting. Now, the value of a meeting like this is that comrades who are thousands of miles apart can exchange experiences, can have a dialogue, as we saw, for instance, between Marcia and Maya just now, explaining in detail their experiences and the work that they're doing and learning from one another. I've had the privilege of seeing Comrade Maya at work in Delhi, and by the way, of seeing Comrade Swasthika at work in Sri Lanka, and they are doing magnificent work, model work that we can all learn so much from their experiences and from the conclusions that they reached over the course of their struggles. Now, there is a forum which meets regularly, which meets weekly, where workers can meet to explain just in the way that it happened today, where they can exchange experiences, exchange ideas, learn from history, learn from their own struggles, and that's the the purpose of the Workers' International Network. We do meet every week. We've met every week for the last 5 years, almost without a break, where we hear first-hand reports from comrades at the forefront of class struggles in countries around the world and on every continent. So I would like to extend an invitation to those comrades who haven't been before. We are not a sect. We are not trying to peddle a particular line. We're a forum for the exchange of experiences and the exchange of ideas, a network of workers where we're reaching a common outlook and a common position from the discussions and from the collective experiences that we've all had and that we're able to exchange. So I do make an appeal to comrades. Please come, bring your experiences, bring your ideas, and let us all benefit. So if you would like to be added to our mailing list, could you please contact me or Felicity, who can pass them on to me, and I really welcome your participation in future meetings. Thanks very much, comrades, and thanks for a really stimulating and inspiring meeting.
Comrades, I'm going to share the video, the PowerPoint I tried to start the meeting with now, but just as the meeting closes, we just watch this, if I can make it work. I'm screen sharing, let me see. I don't know, I never can work out why these things work sometimes and not other times. See what I'm doing. It's share.
We can see the.
Can you? Good.
We can see it, but we can't hear anything.
Okay, I will play it now then. That's good. I hadn't come here. Sorry. And the second screen is Jabu's mum.
We're just seeing the first screen at the moment, Val.
Okay. Okay. I think it's about 10 seconds before it moves on. Sorry. I'm just going to leave it playing to see how it goes. Sorry. Sorry, not doing it well at all.
Is there anybody here who can give Felicity advice? I think we're all equally hopeless.
It's just difficult to see the instructions because there should be a thing to play somewhere. Otherwise, just go through the slides, Val.
Okay.
I'm sorry, are you trying to play the voice cover?
I'm trying to play the. I set the music to go through as it played automatically, but it's not working. I'll just play through without the music. I'll just flip through the what can you see on the screen now? Is it still Jabu's mum?
No, Nadeep Kaur.
Okay, right. And this is Vera's graphics from yesterday, which is very beautiful. And the more modern protests. And that was London yesterday, I think. These are London yesterday. And I like the lady with her fist, we can do it. When we do stalls in the streets for our campaign for the Women's Hospital, that's what old women stop with their daughters and show their daughters that picture. They say, see, you can do it. That's what this is. Women can do things. And obviously the campaign in Mercer's going to tell me off for how I say it, Rahova. And obviously, no, sorry, I'm giving up entirely. We will have a good person next time who's really understands the tech.
Maybe maybe it can be sent round, Felicity, by email
I'll
as well.
I'll see can I get it working. I am intending to email everybody. Certainly all the speakers and anyone else who wants me to email stuff from this meeting. So the conversation continues. So apologies for the tech, folks. It's not quite worked. And I think we'll say goodbye. And yes, Marcia's just said, could we send out an appeal to the comrades for assistance with funds? We will do that, Marcia. I'll do that by email. Right, so we say goodbye then, comrades.
Bye, comrades.
Bye. Sorry, Roger.
Bye-bye.
Thank you again.
Bye. Thank you.
Could I just say before, I should have said before, the next meeting will be, we're very privileged to have an Israeli socialist speaking on the situation in Israel and the Middle East. That's Moshe Makova. He was the founder of the anti-Zionist Israeli organization Matzpen, and he's had a long history of several decades of struggle against the Israeli ruling class and for internationalist ideas. And the week after that, we're having a discussion on what Trumpism represents and the nature of reaction today and of fascism. So comrades are very welcome to come along and to join our mailing list and to get notice of all our future meetings.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you
to everyone for attending.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, Zira. Hopefully speak to you soon.
Yeah. Okay. Bye.
Bye.
See you, Jabu. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, ladies.
Bye, comrades.